We are called the Midnight Society. Separately, we're very different. We like different things. We live in different parts of the world, and we have different friends. But one thing draws us together: the dark. Each week, we gather around our virtual fires to share our fears and our strange and scary tales. It's what got us together and what keeps bringing us back. This is a warning for all who join us. You are going to leave the comfortable light and step into the world of the supernatural.
I woke up to hear knocking on glass. At first, I thought it was a sound from the window until I heard it again and realized it came from the mirror. I tried to ignore it. After all, how many times this past week had I spent answering that call, that inexorable summons? How many hours had I taken out of my days, my life, to heed her requests? So, I pulled the covers over my head and tried to go back to sleep. Useless, of course. She wouldn't cease tapping until I answered. I took a deep breath, sat up placing my arms on my lower legs, and braced myself to walk over to the mirror. As soon as my face was reflected in the mirror, hers appeared to my right side. Thus seen, it was almost like she was physically present in the room with me. But she lived inside the mirror. Her spirit had been trapped there for nearly 2 years, ever since she died of a disease whose name she still refused to disclose to me. How she got in the mirror and why she was still there, I had no idea. Not that I really wanted to know. I already knew too much about her existence when she was alive. Her marriage to a cold, indifferent husband, her multiple miscarriages before she finally gave birth to her son, her friendless life. Now I stared back at her very pale features, willing myself not to show any signs of weakness. Unlike a week ago when I had first brought her home, first brought this mirror home from the junk heap outside my friend's posh apartment building, my hands weren't trembling with the shock of finding out that someone lived inside this seemingly ordinary pane of glass. That fateful night, I had almost fainted, nearly blacked out when I was done polishing it with a wet cloth and heard someone tapping and whispering. After looking around my apartment, I had been forced to recognize that whatever entity lived inside was trying to communicate with me. That's how it began. She told me too much about her past life, evoked my sympathy. I'd started crying when she described saying goodbye to her toddler on her deathbed, and had me visit him every day since then. She had cajoled me into going to her old house, mansion really, to sit by him and talk to him like she would. I had played with him, clumsily at first because I had never been around children, then got increasingly more creative about our games. Now here she was again, no doubt with a new request, perhaps to buy him a new toy and take it to him this afternoon, or outsmart his nanny and take him to the park, he loved the duck pond, or just read to him for an hour like she would have if she were still alive. When she spoke to me this time, her voice was as silvery as ever, but her eyes had a strange glint to them.
"Ivana,"
she whispered,
"my savior, my lovely friend, I'd like you to go over tonight to see Trovic and read him a few bedtime stories. Say between 9:30 p.m. and 11 p.m. Will you do that for me, my angel?"
No, I refused flatly. Besides, Won't it be way past Trovik's bedtime?
Perhaps,
She said.
but maybe you could, I don't know, wake him up for a bit, have him listen to you reading, then get him to fall.
That doesn't make any sense, Tana, I cut in. Why would I wake up a 4-year-old just to make him go back to sleep again? Besides, wouldn't his nanny, careless though she is, be alerted by the noise? Tana's eyes shone even more with a crazy light as she replied.
Not on Sunday nights, no. Those nights, Jarina sneaks out of the house to meet with her lover, a terrible man who waits for her at the end of the street.
Well, I still can't do it, I said. I have to be at work early tomorrow.
You won't be going to...
She began.
I mean, you don't have to spend much time with him tonight. Just 2 hours, please. I miss those dark nights in his nursery. Just the two of us looking out at the stars and the moon.
There was going to be a full moon tonight, I remembered. For some reason, that thought made me uneasy, as did the weird sparkle in her eyes. Now she was also biting her lips as if she wanted to keep herself from blurting out something. Fine, I surprised myself with the answer. I'll go. Just don't bother me for the rest of the day. She laughed then, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. Normally, she just smiled at me in a pleading or grateful way.
I knew you would,
She said.
You've been such a good friend to me, Ivana. I'll remember that. Always.
But this is the last time I do something crazy like this, I warned her. Breaking into someone else's house in the dark of night.
It will be the last time.
She promised solemnly.
I swear it on my grave.
You're welcome, I grunted and walked away from the mirror. I skipped lunch and worked on my files for the rest of the day, determined not to fall behind if I was late getting into work the next morning. It took me longer than expected. By 9 p.m., I was lightheaded with hunger, but I told myself I'd make myself something to eat once I returned from Tana's errand. I stopped in front of the mirror and tapped it 3 times as we'd agreed. Tana appeared at my side immediately and I steeled myself as she faced me to move into my body. First, she pressed her chest to mine, then grabbed my hands and tightened her icy fingers around mine, then stood on my feet, bumped her head into mine, pushed against my shoulders, jammed our collarbones together. There was a moment of intense pain that went through my body. Then she was inside me. I'm done, she, or rather I, whispered. I grunted in reply, shook myself from head to toe, and slowly walked around a bit to reorient myself. From now, until I came back to the mirror and asked her to leave, she would inhabit my physical shell. No words were exchanged between us. I seldom spoke to her when she was inside me. It felt stupid to talk to myself. I set out in the wintry cold, the moon and dim street lights guiding my way. I had the constant sensation I was being followed, and I told myself to stop being stupid. When I approached the upscale neighborhood where Tana's mansion was, I felt a sudden, strong urge to retrace my steps and go back home. But I forced myself to keep moving, to retrieve the key to the back door from under the flower pot by the fountain. She told me where to find it that first time, then quietly opened the door and creep upstairs. Trovik was sound asleep as expected. I felt my way around the nursery, annoyed that it already felt so familiar. There was no sound of snoring from the small bedroom next to it. Tanya had been right that his nurse had sneaked away to her weekly assignation. I shook Trovik awake, none too gently, then carried him to the white rocking chair by the moonlit window as he rubbed his eyes with his dimpled fists. Tanya had told me that it was her favorite place to nurse him as a baby and later to read and rock him to sleep. Everything looked eerier in the moonlight. I pulled out one of his story books from the wicker basket by the chair. Some nonsense about a lioness and her cubs talking to each other and promising never to leave each other. According to Tanya, that was his favorite book. Tonight it gave me the creeps, but I read it aloud slowly, and his eyes never left the page. Trovik insisted in his sleepy voice that I read it to him again. I clenched my teeth, then read it out loud for the second time. Once I got done, I heard the clock chime 11 p.m. I also felt my head throb with a headache, a sudden sharp pain I had never felt before. Perhaps it was a hunger headache, or maybe just the strain of the past week, living two lives. Either way, I was done. I got up, lifting Trovik off my lap as I did so, and carried him over to his cot with all his stuffed animals. The unblinking eyes of the large stuffed cat at the foot of the bed made me shiver involuntarily. When I tried to put him down, Trovik raised his arms again and clung to me like a limpet. I tried peeling off his fingers one by one, but he started crying, a thin, high wail that made the hairs on my arms stand up. "Don't," I heard Tanya speak out of my mouth. "Stay with him. Can't you see he needs you?" I was about to retort that it wasn't me he needed, it was her. But I realized there was no point arguing with her. I reluctantly carried him back to the chair and sat down to begin rocking him again. It took all the strength I had. I'd started feeling very weak and tired. "Mama loves you, sweetie," she made me whisper to him. "Mama loves you very much." "Oh yes, she does." Trovik smiled at me in reply. Over the past week, he had gotten used to his mother's voice coming out of the mouth of a stranger. He'd become familiar with someone in a different body treating him exactly as his mother would. Next, she sang to him in my voice, a haunting lullaby about holding hands as a mother and baby slept next to each other. It was a long song and my headache was terrible by now. I decided I had enough. When the clock chimed 3/4 of an hour after 11 o'clock, I stood up again, intending to put him back in bed even if he cried. But my legs wouldn't support me when I stood up. I fell onto my back, hitting my head and neck against the legs of the chair, Trovik on top of me. For a brief moment, I lay there, trying to regain my strength. I'd never felt so drained in my life before. What was happening to my body? Trovik, however, seemed unperturbed, sitting on my chest, and started to play with my hair. I decided to stay there a minute longer before I attempted to rise again.
Mama will always keep you safe, my little love.
Tanya told him in a strong tone she'd never had me speak in before.
Oh yes, Mama will always be with you.
I wanted to reclaim my voice and tell her to shut up. I wanted to get up and leave this room, to run away from this house forever. I'd throw away the accursed mirror, or better still, I'd break it into a million pieces and throw it into the river. If only I could speak, if I could just raise myself on my arms and stand again. But I couldn't move a muscle. The moon came right by the window and everything was thrown into sharp brightness. Now I felt like someone was choking me. Someone had their hand pressed over my mouth and nose. It wasn't Rovik. He'd climbed off me and was sitting by my side, looking up and out the window. Then he turned to me and smiled. He leaned over my face and whispered,
Mama, you came back.
I saw a reflection in his eyes. I would have screamed if I could, because it wasn't my face I could see anymore. It was Tana's face. I dug my nails into the carpet, pushed myself up by a few inches to the level of his bed. I wanted to see myself in the glass eyes of the stuffed cat. No, it wasn't me. Still Tana, her face, her shoulders. With the last of my strength, I turned to the window and looked at myself in the glass. It was her reflection. I was gone. I heard the clock strike midnight. The moon disappeared from near the window and the room was enveloped in darkness. I felt the darkness creeping over me, shrouding me, suffocating me, pulling me along with it. I was falling down somewhere into a dark well. I was drowning in the black depths of... As I lost consciousness for the last time, I heard Tana say,
Mama's here, my love, and she won't go away again. Oh yes, Mama will never leave you.